Hi, my name is Dr. Jim Schroeder, and I'm the Vice President of the Department of Psychology and Wellness here at Easterseals. I wanted to just talk for a few minutes today because it's just a strange, uncertain time for us as parents, as grandparents, as professionals. There's a lot going on right now. So I thought it'd be worth just kind of talking a little bit about how do we help our families and our kids feel healthier and happier at a time when it's really stressful. So my first thought is that we as parents especially, and I should note that I here as a pediatric psychologist, it's what I do during the day, but at night I'm the father of 8 kids, all from the ages of 13 through 8 months. And so I thought to myself, you know what, we as parents really need to find a way to unite together, kind of have common themes during this difficult time. And so one of the first things that it kind of occurs to me that's really important when we're trying to do the best thing for our kids, and it's kind of a scary, uncertain time, is to really make sure that we as parents are prioritizing our own health and well-being. So often we pour so much into our kids and the tasks of the day, and never more than we're probably doing right now. And I think it's just so important that we first realize that we can only give what we have. We can only give, the strength and resiliency and the courage that we ourselves feel. And so my first message for all of us today is that we as parents should never look at it as being selfish when we're taking care of our own physical, psychological, social, and spiritual well-being. And so anything we do from this point, any message I give you, if you're hearing one thing, it's from one parent to another, please take care of yourselves. So beyond that, the question is, well, how do we take care of ourselves and do we take care of our own kids? And I talk a lot about here what I call the big 4. And these are the areas of lifestyle that not only are important every day, but especially when we're going through a pandemic like we're going through now. So I'm going to talk briefly about what it means to kind of address areas of the big 4 and how we can help ourselves be healthier and happier even in difficult times. So the first one of the 4 they speak about is sleep. I often joke that sleep is probably the least respected but the most important thing that we can do in our lives. And there's a reason we average about 25 years of sleep through an average typical lifespan because there's so much that goes on there. So what I'd say to parents and kids right now is that never has it been more important to have our sleep available to rejuvenate our bodies and minds, but a few things we need to consider in making sure that we're taking care of our sleep. One, kids that are preteen and younger really should be going to bed at least at 9 o'clock or earlier. If they're not doing that, it's probably not giving them adequate time to take care of the sleep that they need to have. 2, it's so important that we try to restrict as much as possible the media and technology in our kids' bedrooms. I know for many of you as parents, your kids may have a TV in the bedroom, they may have other devices, and it's a difficult struggle sometimes, and I feel that as a parent myself. But this is the time when we really need to maximize our kids' ability to lay down, go to bed at night, and reap all the positive benefits of sleep. For parents ourselves, for even our teens and above, let's not forget that we may have sleepless nights, and that's just kind of part of what goes on when we have stress like this. But we really need to set up our schedule so that we as parents can get 7 to 9 hours of sleep, and our teens can get 8 to 10 hours of sleep that are so important for them there. I just often think that we stay up late at night hoping that we can do something more for our kids and families, and what we probably can do the most is head off to bed and go to sleep. So that's the first one. The second of the big 4 is our diet. Now, if we're all honest right now, Pizza Hut is hiring a lot of new delivers across the country and new employees because we all need a little comfort with our food, and that's cool. I understand that, I feel it, and we all can seek it out, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I will say this, that just like sleep, the science has really reinforced that what we eat matters so much to how we think, how we feel, and how we move. And so this has never been as important as now to really harness the great benefits of food in the best way possible. So there's 2 easy things to think about. We're all going to eat some processed food during the day. But if we can increase even a little bit our whole food intake, right? Those fruits, those vegetables, those natural grains, even meat, and in many ways chicken or fish or things like that are healthy, then we're doing our bodies and brains a favor. And I know you think, oh, but that's not what I want to veg on or want to eat. But you know what? If we knew that food could be a great conduit to greater health and less stress during these difficult times, I think we would all take it on a little bit more. The second piece of the diet is we have to remember that all of our bodies are anywhere from 70 to 80% water, which means, as I joke with my teens when I talk with them, hey, your body's not 80% Coca-Cola, It's a lot of water. So what we need to do is we really need to maximize the benefits of drinking more water throughout the day. And if there were two simple things, I would say try to increase those natural foods, try to increase your water intake, and let's start there. The third area is our activity level. So there's been some amazing studies recently in the last 10 years that indicated that even exercise alone, adhered to in just kind of a really responsible way, can decrease depression, can improve anxiety, and just improve our overall cognitive functioning. Well, guess what? When you're in the middle of stress like we are right now, never have we needed more to move as much as possible. And so if you're someone who hasn't really exercised at all over the years, hey, no worries, right? You start with where you're at and you grow from there. And maybe you add even 5 to 10 minutes of walking or simple exercise a few days a week. If you're someone who's exercised a decent amount and sustained it, maybe you add in a little bit extra up to the point where it's healthy. The big message is that no exercise is too small or unworthy at this point. So I would say to people, hey, even if you have 5 minutes to take a walk outside, which by the way, the colors of nature even seem to have great restorative effects and positive benefits, take a walk outside for 5 minutes and come back to your workplace or your home. Never has there been a more important time to harness the benefits of activity and exercise. We can all keep our social distance, but we have this great area in front of us outside and indoors even to max our abilities in this area. So let's go for that. And the fourth of the big four is that media, tech, screen time. Now again, let's be honest, all of us are having a hard time pulling away from the news stories and those really grim headlines. And I think that we all acknowledge, if we were honest, that we're kind of tapping into more than we need to. The message here is to not abandon it completely, but be very honest with ourselves, that the more you consume that is negative and dark and kind of grim, probably the more you're going to feel that way. And so one thing I'm saying to myself and reminding myself, but others I'm working with, is that if you need to tap in, just kind of limit yourself. Limit yourself once or twice a day to say, look, for 15 minutes, I'm going to get online, I'm going to try to find a decent site, kind of see what's going on. And then once I'm done, I'm going to be done. And I'm going to resist looking at other news stories, other clips, other things, because unfortunately, it's just not helping my health and well-being. And if it's not helping our health and well-being, guess what it's not doing for our kids? And I would argue that kids, especially teen and under, really don't even need to be seeing news stories and all these different things going on. They can get that information from us. They're bound to get it from other places sometimes. But let's create an environment at home where it's a hopeful environment, not a scary environment. And that really starts with our media and tech consumption. So those are what I call the big four. But beyond that, I want to speak directly to all of you parents. And again, as I said, I'm a father of 8 kids, and our kids range again from the ages of 13 all the way down to our 8-month-old who just turned that a few days ago. And when I looked at my kids, I think, okay, so what messages do I want them to hear from me? What do I want them not to hear, but to feel, but to embody? And so these are, I think, 3 core messages that I really believe that we can all, if we as parents unite around these, we can really create a great sense of solidarity and hope through what is, I know, a very difficult time. The first message is that we have to really convey the idea that it's about courage over despair. So what I mean by this is that every day, if you think about our lives, even before this pandemic came to reality, we all had challenges, right? We have school challenges, we have work challenges, we have personal challenges, we have all sorts of challenges throughout the day. And one of the keys that we realize with people when it comes to encouraging courageous response is recognizing that something we can look at as a challenge is a lot different than we look at as just a stressor, right? So if you're an athlete and you have the challenge of trying to finish first in a race or to maximize your best time, well, when you see it as a challenge, you're willing to persevere and you're willing to take on some difficult things because you really see it as something worth value. But on the flip side, if we communicate this as just a stressor to our kids, well, unfortunately, stressors are just things to be avoided. And if we keep thinking about it that way, they tend to only increase anxiety. So one of the core messages I really think as parents we need to convey to our kids is, yeah, nobody wanted to be in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, nobody wanted to experience this, but we don't really have a choice now. So are we going to look at this as a challenge, right? Challenges don't carry guarantees, but they carry a lot of ways to empower ourselves, right, through many different means. Or do we look at this in a despairing way, like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with another month of this. I can't deal with this. And I truly believe that as we as parents, even if we're not always feeling this way, and we acknowledge our anxiety, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with being anxious. That's just being a human being. But if we acknowledge our anxiety and we acknowledge that it's real, but then also say, look at all the ways that we can empower ourselves and our families and those around us, we're going to find an opportunity to be courageous in a way that can carry on for us. And that's the first message. The second one, and this is a hard one because I feel it myself right now every day, is the message of gratitude versus disappointment, right? All of us are starting to realize there were a lot of things that we were taking for granted that we now wish we kind of had, right? Who among you doesn't want to just sit down with friends right now and have a big chat and a big dinner and just kind of go like you would normally go? I for one, am right there with you, right? Who for one doesn't want to just go to any activities and then jump into something else that night that was fun and not think about the potential of a virus coming upon you, right? We're all there, I understand. So there's a real risk here that if we don't be careful, we're going to all be very disappointed because we think, well, it's springtime. I should be able to do fun things. I shouldn't have to think about this, right? All of that kind of darkness is over. So what we have to do is we have to understand that this is actually giving us a great opportunity to be thankful and gracious for things that we honestly, and self included, have really taken for granted. And I know sometimes people think, that's such a trite response. That's just such an obvious response. Honestly, I don't care how we think about it. It's a really important one. Because when you allow yourself to be kind of in the path of disappointment, you're going to be really disappointed and sad all the time. If you allow yourself to say, hey, that was kind of disappointing, but wow, yeah, now I realize how great of a gift that is, then you start to create a sense again of resiliency with yourself, with your kids, with the people around you. So I would argue right now, the second message we want to convey is, it's okay to be disappointed, just don't live on that pathway. Create a pathway of gratitude and understand the reason we're disappointed is because we have so many gifts to be disappointed that we're missing. And actually, we still have so many gifts every day that we're experiencing that are really cool. The third message and the final message, and I really felt this recently, and there's a few articles on my website that talk about this, is the message of empathy versus self-absorption, right? Again, I want to convey there's nothing wrong with feeling anxious and depressed and upset during this time. And there's nothing wrong with having those moments where you're just kind of absorbed in your misery and your stress. That's okay. But the question is, what path are you conveying to yourself and your kids? And I think one of the great silver linings that we're experiencing right now is a silver lining of empathy. When I was younger, I'm sure many of you heard this phrase, and I didn't eat what I was supposed to eat at dinner, my parents would be quick to say at some point, you know, there are kids somewhere in the world, in Africa or somewhere else, that would really love to have the food you're eating. And I was kind of like, I'm disgusted. I really don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it. I know, Mom and Dad, I know there is. But why do you keep telling me that? Well, I've kind of thought about this in the last week, that as we're being faced with going to the grocery store and not finding meat or eggs on the shelves, as we're being faced with our activities being limited and things seeming a little uncertain about our economy, it's come to my awareness that I'm finally starting in a very, very small way to live in the presence of what my parents were trying to tell me years ago. And the presence of that is that it's one thing to know that other people are struggling in this world way worse than we are. It's another thing to begin to feel and understand it. And I think one of the great silver linings is that we as a country of great gifts, of great wealth, of great wonders, are kind of coming to experience just a little bit what it must feel like to be in another place in this world. I mean, consider the country of Yemen, where that economy has been collapsed for almost a half decade, where they've been in the throngs of a civil war for a long time. Consider the country of Haiti, where they've been racked by horrible natural disasters over the past 5 years. Consider the country of Central African Republic, where the average life expectancy is not even, I think, 50 years old, and where almost 1 in 10 of their infants die shortly after birth. I'm not saying this because I think that I'm trying to pull your heartstrings. I'm just saying this that I do believe that one of the great silver linings of this and what we need to convey to our kids is that the best way not to be self-absorbed into our misery is to understand that we are all united and together in this world, and that we have been given a great opportunity to feel empathy at a level that we just didn't feel before. So the really 3 messages that we convey in whatever way you are and whoever authentically you are as parents are the message of courage over despair, right? The message of gratitude over disappointment, and the message of empathy over self-absorption. And I believe that when we model this through what we say and what we do, even when we're moments of kind of our own like uncertainty, we will create a not only household of resiliency, we will begin to create a culture of resiliency. And one of the things that I hope so much from this is that when it's all said and done and this unravels itself as it will unravel, is that we as a community, not just in this community of Evansville, Indiana, but this community of the broad state and the broad country and the broad world, we have created more resilient people in our current generation and our next generation and in the generations that aren't even living right now. Because as I spoke about in a little ways back, you know, I met a gentleman I know very well in the locker room every morning when I change and get ready, and he's in his mid-80s, and he said, yeah, I have never experienced anything like this. He was born in the Great Depression, but of course didn't remember a whole lot about it. And so here we are at a really unprecedented time, faced with this opportunity to either create resiliency, it's a legacy of resiliency, or a legacy of fear. And all of us, from one parent to the next, from everyone who's listening to me out there, I know which legacy we want to create. I know where we want to be. You know, it was last week, one of my colleagues walked by and said to me, he said, you know, I've been telling my kids lately that, guess what? You're in the middle of world history being created. And I thought to myself, he said it not in a scary way, but actually a hopeful way. And I thought after he left, that is a really neat message because, you know, when we read about history in the books, we may read it with a tinge of fear or whatever, but we actually read it with a sense of accomplishment many times. And so if we're in the middle of creating world history, then by all means, let's do what we can do to empower ourselves to create a resilient world history, not a fearful one. So I'll end today with a quote that one of the people that I've all loved the most, I wish I could meet someday. Of course, he's no longer alive. His name's Viktor Frankl, and he lived through the Holocaust and World War II. And I consider one of the most horrible, difficult times this history that I've ever experienced. And he has wonderful, great quotes. But one of the quotes he says is that when you can no longer change a situation, you're challenged to change yourselves. There are a lot of things we can do to empower ourselves and keep ourselves safe, but we can't change that the pandemic is upon us. So if we can't change that situation, how can we change ourselves so that our kids, our families, and our communities live on in a much more empowered, beautiful way? Thank you, and I hope you have a great day.